crisis, we've had to downsize our workforce, ask our employees to forego raises and bonuses, and even cut back on employee benefits. Of those companies who offered health care and other benefits, 12% plan to decrease their benefits packages, particularly with respect to health care and retirement. On the revenue side, our business owners have had to find new sources of revenue by becoming innovative, developing new product lines, expanding our customer base, and providing more value to our existing customers. Second, government spending must be cut but should be equitable. While no one wants to cut spending, every program has its constituency and purpose. Programs can and should be cut. However, the cuts need to be equitable. Nothing can be considered sacred. Business owners, when facing cutbacks, look for ways to spread cost-cutting measures across the board, across their employees and programs, and the government can and should do the same. Third, raising revenue should not mean a wholesale tax hike on the small business community. Since small businesses are already on the front lines of the economy, taking all the risk and absorbing the losses, we believe that raising taxes on businesses would adversely affect an economic recovery. The Joint Committee on Taxation expects half of the revenue raised by the expiration of the Bush tax cuts to fall on businesses that are taxed as individuals, known as a flow-through organization. According to many analysts, including the Urban Institute Brookings Institute Tax Policy Center, a significant share of small business income would be subject to higher tax rates. The burden of these increasing rates would jeopardize small business growth at a time when the private sector needs confidence and access to capital. In conclusion, WIP is heartened by the appointment of the Commission to tackle this issue. We are especially pleased that it is a bipartisan commission, since we believe that both parties must work together to achieve a plan going forward. This is what women business owners do. We work together to solve a problem. Thank you for your time.
That was an extraordinary statement, that last sentence. You work together to solve a problem? That's bizarre.
It's novel, isn't it?
It is crazy. I mean, honestly, you've summarized the whole day. Nobody wants to get together with anybody to solve a problem. They're just sticking with their own ideas, and everyone here today has said, we know we have a problem and we want to help, and then they say, but don't touch this. Do not touch this, or your fingers will be fried. And you wonder why the politicians are frozen in place? When groups just say, go to them. I mean, one group said, well, we're headed out this week, and we've got 1,300,000 members, and they're going out to tell this story. Well, you know, I used to sit there and listen to them come, and finally my mind snapped. And I thought, every one of them said, we want you to cut the deficit, Simpson, you're a wonder. And then they'd ask for theirs. It's the most amazing thing to see. You just have to enjoy it. Well, enough of that, but let me say about our colleague, because he's skipped away, as I say, but this gentle giant of a man, Erskine Bowles, very self-effacing, a bit self-effacing, but he got the North Carolina education system and took a hit of 26% that night, Bruce. 26% that Erskine put on the higher education system of North Carolina. That's guts. And he's the last guy living that balanced the budget under President Clinton. And you'd think that people didn't realize, I mean, they wonder about me, which is good, but you ought to realize this guy's the key. Instead of just hanging him and hanging me and enjoying all that. Well, I hope the machine is still running, as Strom would say. Called it the machine. Now, is there anyone else who may have come in under cover? Well, then I'm going to wait here a little longer, because I think there were two other groups that were going to come in at 8, and they were due to be here at 7:45. Probably the woman I've been living with for 56 years, wondering why I've canceled all these calls all day. Are you ready? We greet you on behalf of How are you? You're very kind to leap in here, but we accelerated, and some people didn't show, and we were trying to contact you, but settle down and tell us who you are and what you're about, and appreciate very much your being here.
Well, thank you, and we appreciate you having us. My name's Maureen Campbell. I'm here representing WAND, Women's Action for New Directions. I work here in our Washington, D.C. office, and I'm presenting the testimony of our Executive Director, Susan Scher, who's in our Massachusetts office. Over the weekend of June 26th, America Speaks events were held around the country to allow ordinary Americans to voice their opinions about federal budget priorities. The members of WAND, Women's Action for New Directions, were not surprised to learn that when Americans spoke, it was revealed that 85% of event participants wanted to cut military spending. Since the end of the Cold War, when WAND changed its name from Women's Action for Nuclear Disarmament, and the entire planet expected there would be a peace dividend, WAND has prepared citizens and elected officials for that anticipated surplus. Our mission is to redirect excessive military spending toward unmet human and environmental needs. Our objective has been to make certain that unnecessary and excessive military budget spending be made available for other kinds of security: healthcare, jobs, education, and a clean, safe world in which our citizens can thrive. The Soviet Union crumbled in part because of their dreadful waste of funds on Cold War weapons of war. Imagine our outrage when the U.S. Congress extended the lives of American Cold War weapons systems that were no longer needed. The long arm of the military congressional industrial complex that President and General Dwight David Eisenhower warned us about had truly taken control. Instead of a peace economy and a peace dividend, we have seen military spending expand exponentially. Others will testify on the data and this unprecedented growth. WAND's job here is to represent and affirm the widely held belief that spending priorities must change in order to affect real and lasting security beyond military spending. Thank you to President Obama for naming this commission, and to the co-chairs for taking our testimony. We want this official and august body of evaluators to know that a discretionary budget that spends almost 58% on the military is misguided and out of sync with American values. In the years WAND has been watching the military side of the discretionary federal budget grow, this is the first time we have been able to represent the millions of Americans who agree with us on budget priorities to a group that can truly make an impact. We ask that you put the military budget on the table for cuts by a recalcitrant Congress. We also want to emphasize that President Obama, through Secretary of Defense Gates and Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition Ashton Carter, has made it clear that military services need to identify $100 billion in savings. The public report submitted by the Sustainable Defense Task Force, formed by Congressman Barney Frank with the cooperation of Senator Ron Wyden and Congressman Walter Jones and Ron Paul, lists substantial cuts that would far exceed even the Gates list. While savings might not transfer to domestic discretionary spending, as we at WAND would like, money would be made available to pay military salaries, benefits, and to support troops serving around the world. WAND could not agree more that we need a strong defense and that our troops should be properly supported and equipped. We also believe that the Defense Department should be required to pass audits, meet contract deadlines, and use reputable contractors. As a grassroots organization that can claim 1/3 of all women state legislators as members of WAND's Women Legislators Lobby, we assure you that we stand ready to help realign our federal spending priorities. WAND and its wealth of activists and partner organizations will work for fiscal responsibility for the military side of the budget and for greater support for the unmet human and environmental needs in our country.
Well, I want to thank you very much. Barney's group, and Barney and I worked together on a lot of things when I was here. Their group, we've responded to that and said we're very eager to hear and work with you. We have two members of the commission, one a Democrat, one a Republican, working on the defense budget, and there's a reality there that something will be done. I don't know where we are, but that will, you've expressed it well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You know, while I have a moment, let me thank this amazing staff for sticking around and doing your work. These things just don't happen. This has been well planned. This gentleman here from the House, from the Senate Budget Committee, but all of you have done a beautiful job of getting the physical and all the wonderful works here. And it takes a lot of coordination, and you've done it. Done a beautiful job. And Bruce, too, you've done a splendid job. And I appreciate it. You just came at the right time. I was beginning to get very hungry. Poor guy.
This has never happened.
Get it. Step right into the tiger's den. No. Daniel, the last guy in the lion's den.
Senator, Mr. Reed.
How are you?
I'm fine. This is
Good to-
actually an unprecedented experience for me. Is this on?
Think of these people, all of us waiting for you.
I'm amazed. I'm absolutely amazed. I'm actually amazed that you've been sitting here all day and have the capacity to even listen to anybody.
Good to see you.
So thank you. My name is Matthew Melmed. In my day job, I'm the executive director of 023, which is the National Center for Infants, Toddlers, and Families. However, as a volunteer, I serve as the chairperson of the Children's Leadership Council. And the Children's Leadership Council consists of over 60 national children's organizations, ranging from groups such as my own that represents the needs of babies and toddlers to those that represent youth and adolescents. And these 60 organizations have come together to become a collective voice on behalf of America's children. And they've asked me, as the chair today, to come to testify before you, because we are equally concerned about the issue of the federal deficit and the debt. And we know that too often the debt is talked about as something that we don't want to leave to our children. And we're certainly concerned about that as well. And at the same time, the reality is that our children are paying a very dear price right now because we fail to invest in them in a number of ways that will actually help the economy and bring down the debt in the long run. Children and youth are in a unique, if not uncomfortable position in terms of the country's fiscal crisis. They played no role in creating that crisis, but they have the most to lose if their needs are not taken into account when developing fiscal reform. We do not believe there should be excess spending, but we would certainly ask you, when you look at where spending is taking place, to not just look at the small part of discretionary spending where everyone seems to focus in terms of the federal budget and where kids mostly are, but look at things such as the tax expenditures that we don't take any look at and say we should be cutting and considering in terms of saving money. The Children's Leadership Council, which I represent, urges you to protect the investments that we do now make in kids at a minimum, not to see cuts in existing programs that help kids across the board. And in terms of future budgetary policy, we believe there's a fair amount of economic research, some done by Nobel laureates, that will show you that if you do investments now in kids, in particular at the end of the spectrum that I deal with, in infants and toddlers, they will pay returns in terms of society many times over. Right now, investments for babies, children, and youth account for less than 10 cents of every federal dollar, and less than half of the share that we made investments at the federal level for kids just a generation ago. So in fact, what we have seen is that federal spending in terms of kids has actually gone down, while all of federal spending has been going up for everybody else. As I said, this investment is one that is the safest and wisest we could make. We would love to be able to work with the commission and commend your work in providing some very concrete ideas of things that you could do to be looking at making other reductions. It seems like children, and particularly very young children, are always at the back of the line when it comes to finding money in this government, whether it be for tax expenditures, as I said, or wars or bailouts. Budget cuts have been made on the backs of those who are least able to respond, and in doing so, we really put the future of our kids at stake. And with that, Senator and Mr. Reed, I notice I have 30 seconds. If you actually want to ask a question, so you want to be entertained, I'd be happy to answer.
Is Bill Harris of Chicago, a KIDS, or you called Kids, a Kids PAC? Is he part of your group?
No, he is not, although I'm very familiar with Bill.
You know him?
Bill is a freelance guy who does a lot of great stuff on behalf of children's advocacy.
Right.
The 60 organizations that are the Children's Leadership Council run from the Voices to America's Children to the Child Welfare League of America to the National Association of Child Care Resource and Referral Agencies. It's really over 60 organizations that represent either certain populations of children, or they represent certain types of services that are provided to children.
Well, I thank you very much. You're good to hop right in and get wet all over quick. And thank you. And thank you for what you do for children.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for what you do, and Mr. Reed. And again, it is our sincerest hope that when you really look at where the money really goes, that the deficit reduction doesn't come at the expense of kids, because that's not where the money's going.
I would not think it would come from that. There are so many other marvelous pots. Tax expenditures are a joy. There are 206 of them. They went on the books because they were listed as a tax cut.
Yes.
And they come off as a tax increase. So hang on tight while we dig into those babies, because they'll say, look at what they're doing, tax increases, and the fake one was where they stuck them together as a tax cut.
I couldn't agree with you more, Senator. I would also point out, and again, this is the work of a Nobel laureate economist at the University of Chicago, that if you really looked at return on investment, social investment, and you looked at where we invest our dollars, this is the work of James Heckman, that what you would see is that if you put investments at the very beginning, in the 0 to 3 years, and then going along, you'll get the greatest return on investment. And then if you do a converse of that chart and look at how we spend our money, very little at the early years, a lot in K through 12, and even more in higher ed, and then adult education and learning. So we don't do policy in the way that maybe we should do if we looked at what research really is telling us. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And is there any further groups to testify? Is that it? And then thank you very much. And thank you, Bruce. Thanks to this fine staff for your patience. Thanks for the Senate and their hospitality here in the budget area. And we'll disband until Christmas Day.
I'm glad I showed up.